welcome to this webinar. My name is Rafael Mendez and I'm a Sencha MVP. I'm really thankful to be here today and to get to talk about this exciting new tool that Sencha is putting out there called ReExt. And basically the main idea for this webinar is to show you the implementation of certain components. In this case, well, a grid, a chart, and some other components that will eventually we will try to make like a pseudo dashboard using this new tool from Sencha. But first, I will give like a brief overview of what ReExt is, and well, starting by what is ReExt, right? It is basically a library that allows the integration of XJS components into React applications, making it easier to create rich and complex user interfaces using both technologies. So you could say that it combines the best of these both worlds, the variety of components contained in XJS, and also, well, the popularity and performance of React. Such a combination like this turns out to be like a highly potential tool for the world of front-end development. For this particular webinar, I won't go into much detail about why we choose React, how this combination works, or certain details about it, since we had other past webinars that I kindly invite you to watch. Those were made by Mark Guzmano, who really goes into detail on all of these questions that might arise. So for this particular webinar, we will focus more on the creation of these components so that you can appreciate how they are handled and programmed. Also, for those of you who are already familiar with XJS, I'm sure it will be like a piece of cake. So let's start with the simplest thing. In order to create our pseudo dashboard, first we need the basics, which is to have access to npm install, to have React, and to have also access to ReExt. So again, in Mark's webinar, he goes into greater detail on this, but basically what we will do is first register on the Sencha website, then go to the ReExt section where we can read a bit more about this tool. And once registered, we will get access to the ReExt repository on npm. Right there, we can read a bit more about its different features and uses, as well as how to install its VS Code extension, which we will discuss in just a moment. And most importantly, we will read about how to create our first application with ReExt. For this, we basically have two options, which is using the create React app method or using another tool called Bit. In this case, I'll choose to use Bit and follow the commands provided here to create my ReExt application. I just need to choose the folder where I want my project and open a command prompt or a PowerShell. Next, I'll execute the commands that we saw in the documentation and I'll just click enter. This may take a few minutes, but once created, we'll have an application similar to this one, which is the basic ReExt template. It comes with a grid, which displays information when a record is selected, as well as a couple of other components like this button and with a simple event and this ReExt logo. So we'll start from this template to create, well, maybe to modify these components. So the next step is to open our project in the code editor that we prefer. In my case, I use VS Code, so I'll also take the opportunity to tell you a bit about the ReExt extension for VS Code, which is basically an extension that you can obtain from the ReExt npm page that we saw earlier. You just need to download the v6 file. Once you have it, you can go back to VS Code, go to the extensions section and click install from v6. Then you just select the file that we just downloaded. Once done, you need to maybe reload VS Code and it would look like mine. with these new sections added by the ReExt extension. The first one, marked with a P, is a ReExt project view window, which allows me to create or open ReExt projects. It basically handles the execution of the commands we saw earlier to create a new ReExt project, just like the one we made. So, but it also let us choose the theme, the toolkit, the version, among other things. And next we have the window that it's marked with an S called SDK, or Software Development Kit. This basically allows us to access the Sencha portal with our credentials and download our own SDK of the version that we need to work with ReExt locally. Because ReExt usually uses our remote GPL versions, so it's better to have the SDK locally. Then we have the window marked with an E called Edit, which I consider the most important. It basically recognizes the components in our ReExt code and allows us to edit them. So we can edit like the properties, configurations, and the events in a simple way. So it also displays the documentation for each component as a support. So during this webinar, you might see me sometimes typing the code, and other times using the edit window. And these are just some of the capabilities of the ReExt extension for VS Code that are available now, as it is still in somewhat of this trial beta testing phase. So now that we have already established these basics for ReExt, and also that we know a little bit about the VS Code extensions, we can start working with our basic template. So the first thing I'm going to do is it's to manage my configuration for this project. In this case, this will all be located in the main.jsx file, where I will be adding some lines of code. One of these is the variable rext data, which basically includes the configuration that I'm going to use. Uh, since you saw me that I was downloading the SDK, I will be pointing it to the SDK version for 7.8. I'm going to be using the Toolkit Classic with the Triton theme. And the only package that I'm going to add would be the charts, since these are the ones that we are going to use for our components. And finally, the location, I'm going to change it to local, so that it will be taking the components from the xall file in my SDK and not from the remote GPL version. With this part already done, I just need to add the variable here, and well, to check if it's working correctly, it's just going to be the same template, just the components are going to be taken from the SDK, not from the remote version. So now the next thing I'm going to do is create a resource folder. In this folder, I'm going to put like my fake backend, since I'm not really connecting to any backend right now. This is just like for example purposes. I'm going to be using a .json file, which contains my information, and to the one that I'm going to be connecting. So basically, this JSON file is going to be imported as a variable, sales data from this file, and I'm going to use it for my grid. So now that I already imported it, I can start deleting some of the components that I don't really need for this example. Starting from these ones, that basically it's just the button, and the others are just like some methods that can be used for the animation that we saw there from to change the orientation of the components. But I'm not going to use it, so I'm just going to erase them. I'm obviously leaving the grid since it's the one that I'm going to be using, but I'll start modifying some of its features. Uh, as I told you, I can just use code, or I can use the extension to modify some of these things, like its style from the component. I can add like a different width or height, with also a flex. I can also add a different title. And well, for the columns, I already have them defined here, and so I'm just really just going to paste them. But this is pretty similar to XGS or any other component. We basically define the columns that we want to display. Each column has a text property for the header and a data index property that corresponds to the key in our data. So we are also setting a flex property to control the width of each column. So here we have the columns for ID, product, sales, revenue, date, salesperson, assistant, and email. Each column will display the respective data from our sales data JSON file. So this would be what we call the store. That's why we defined it like this. I'm also going to delete well, not going to delete, but I'm going to leave the event just like this, because I'm going to use it later, but for now I don't need it to be um, well, to be marked as an error. So I'm just going to leave it like this. And now, well, to enhance the readability of our grid, we will add some custom renderers for the revenue and date columns. These renderers would format the revenue as currency and the date in a readable format, just using the XGS components. The XGS format, sorry. So this currency renderer function formats the revenue values as currency, while the other one, date renderer, formats the date values. We then need to apply these two renderers to their respective columns in our grid. So I will be updating these columns, which will be revenue, just like this, and date. Well, and now just like to finish this first section of this grid, I'm going to add the handle row selection. So when the row is selected, we want to capture the data and display it in a model dialog. So uh, for this, we'll define a handle select function that is the one that is going to be here. Although I'm not going to use to do the model right now, it's going to be like the last component. I'm just going to define it and getting ahead of it, knowing that I'm going to use it eventually. So this handle select function basically captures the selected row data and updates the row state. So we're also going to use some other function to make it visible. So when we show the model, the data is going to be the one that it's showing. So with with these final changes, we have successfully added and configured our sales data grid. We have defined the columns, we added custom renderers, and we set up a selection handler so that we can capture the raw data. All of this, as you can see, in just a couple of minutes, and well, fairly easy if you already knew how to config these components in the XGS way. So now we'll begin adding our next component, uh, which will be a chart. Remember, I already added chart as a package in my project, so if you're following this as a tutorial, you need to make sure that you have it as true in your project configuration. And well, we'll begin by adding ReExt component with the xtype Cartesian to create our bar chart. And well, for this Cartesian component, we need to define a store in its configuration that holds the data for our bar chart. For simplicity, we are using this static data just to represent the product revenue. And well, this hard-coded data will be the one that will be displayed in our chart. And next, after that, we need to configure the axis for our chart. We'll be adding a numeric axis for the revenue values and a category axis for the product names. So this helps in labeling our chart correctly. Now that we have the axis, we need to add the series configuration. This will define how our data will be represented visually. We'll use a bar series to display the revenue for each product, as well as some configurations for this style so that, well, it can look better, but this will basically fill the bar charts with a color. And well, since I don't really like the color that it it uses by default, I'm going to add a custom renderer to color the bars differently. This render function will use an array of colors that we will define as bar colors to assign a different color to each bar. So this makes the chart more, well, visually appealing. And now, well, with these changes, we have successfully added a bar chart to our dashboard. This chart provides a visual representation of the revenue for each product, and well, we created it in just a few minutes, just as we did with the grid, showing you how easy it is to adapt to this new tool by Sencha called ReExt. So the next thing we are going to do, it will be our modal dialog. Uh, this basically will display the detailed information about the selected road from our grid. Uh, and well, this will function as an enhancer for the user experience by providing like an easy way to view a detailed data. So we will start first by creating our component. This would be well, this will contain a ReExt panel component that will be the one that displays the information. So well, I'm going to define its style with this width and height, also some configuration that needed to be scrollable. The title going to define it as details, and well, it will have a layout of form. Next, I'm going to define each field, in this case as an array of items. I'm just going to add a display field just like this for each one of the columns of my grid, so that it can show the information, right? Each field basically has this display field showing the label and value. And well, I'm just going to add at the end a button that can close the window, right, with the handle close model. Since I already use it here, I needed to declare at the start of my code. So I'm just going to go there and well, define the event. Also, I'm going to define the other two variables that I'm going to be using. Sorry, the other two constants. And well, now that I have them defined, what I'm going to be doing is opening a new div in which I will be showing my panel whenever I click the handle. But what this div is going to do is add like a modal background that will appear when the model is visible, and this background will dim the rest of the screen. and well, capture clicks to close the model. So these divs will cover the entire screen with a semi-transparent black background, and when click it will call handle close model to, well, to close the model, right? And inside this model background we will add the model content. This will contain the ReExt panel, so I'm just going to cut it from here and paste it inside here. So to ensure that the model displays the correct data when a row is selected, we have the handle select function that it would update the row state and set is model visible to true. With this setup, when a user selects a row in the grid, the row data is captured and the model dialog is shown with detailed information. So with these changes, we have successfully added a model dialog to our dashboard. And as we can see here in our project, this model provides detailed information about the selected row, enhancing the user ability to view and interact with the data. And so this will be like our pseudo dashboard. This will be a grid and a chart and a model window created using ReExt. Remember also that we have the configuration for our projects, and that we can change anything that we want from there, just as we did with our XJS projects. So if I go to here and I can change maybe the theme to material, right here I can show you that the project has now changed to the material theme. And well, I can even change it to the classic theme, which is one of the oldest ones that we have. But this is just to show how you can play with all these configurations and personalizations from XJS in your React projects. And also, well, since we did everything in just one file for this exercise as an example, I'm going to show you how you could encapsulate all of these components within each file so that each one of it can be reused, or maybe just to have a better organization of your code. So the first one that we're going to do is the easiest one. I think you should have a file for the formatters. So we're going to take these two lines of code, the ones that format the revenue and the date, and we're going to create their own file called formatters.jsx. Right here, we are just going to paste these two lines, but we're going to add the export indication so that these two can be used with our grid, which is the one that it's using them. That's the easiest one, but we are already cleaning our apps.jsx. The next one that we should do is the grid. For the grid, the first thing that we will be doing is, well, creating the file called grid.jsx. And well, in this case, I'm doing it right here in the source folder, but you can do your own folder called components, right? And once we have this file called grid, we should import the ReExt library, also import the sales data from the JSON file, and finally we can import the currency renderer and date renderer from the file we just did that is called formatters. Once we have this, we just need to define a constant. In this case, I'm going to name it grid, and well, with the event onSelect. And inside this, we can put the exact same code that we had for the grid. And what this will do is to return us this constant, this component inside the constant grid. Now we will do almost the same for the chart.jsx. First, we create this file and we import the library from ReExt. After this, we also need to build a constant, and in this case the constant chart will have doesn't have an event, but will have the other constant, the one that we use for the bar colors. And after that, we just need to indicate in the return the code for the chart component that we already have. And well, for the last component, in this case the model, we will first create the model.jsx file, and we will do the same of importing the ReExt library. And for this constant, in this case named model, we will also be passing the data that we need for the events. And again, at the last part, we just need to export this default model. So inside of this, we can put exactly the same code that we already had, just making sure that we are passing the data correctly. Then when we return for our app.jsx file, we need to clean it for all the other components that we had there and simply leave the div style. We also leave the handle and the handle select. Those are fine. We are using them, so there's no problem for them to be there. And well, I'm only arranging these divs so that I can show you how, once we had this all defined, I just need to import the grid, the chart, and the model from each corresponding, and then just use them as sections between my divs so that they will be represented exactly as we had them, but encapsulated this time, each one in its own file, so that we can reuse them, we can modify them without affecting the whole code. And as you can see, in just a couple of minutes we have them encapsulated and working exactly as we have when we first do it all in one file. So I will always recommend you to work by the principles of encapsulation and reuse your components as much as possible, so that you have an organized coding experience, and that it's easier for you to maintain these applications. And that's how you start using these XJS components in your React application using ReExt. Also, I'm going to show you the ReExt components that we have here in this demo app that Mark developed. In this demo app, you can see different components, since pivot grids, charts, some other types of charts, the Xmail, the calendar, and you can also see the code just as the Sencha kitchen sink. So if you want to start using some specific component, you can start from here. It is very helpful, and I kindly invite you to test it. And that would be everything from my part. Thank you very much for inviting me to this Sencha webinar, and also thank you for following along with this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful and that you now have a better understanding of how to create these dynamic components using ReExt. Be sure to check the other webinars that we have on ReExt, and also if you have any questions, you can leave it in the box below. I hope this was helpful, and if we have questions, we can now pass to answer them. Thank you. Yeah, okay. That concludes the overview of these ReExt components. And I hope you found this information helpful. Right now, I'd be happy to address any questions you might have. So please feel free to ask them here in the questions box. Right here, I have already a couple ones. The first one is Andres is asking, is ReExt compatible with all versions of XJS and React? And the answer is ReExt is compatible with any versions of React from 18.2.0, and with XJS with 7.0 and onwards. So this will allow for great flexibility and for different project configurations. I hope that answers your questions. I have another one here. Can I use other XJS components with ReExt? Well, yeah, that's basically the whole idea. You can use any XJS components with ReExt. You just need to simply specify the component X type and its configuration in the ReExt component. So, is ReExt compatible with TypeScript? Right here, Stefano is asking. Well, up to date right now, it is not compatible, but I'm sure there could be any updates in the future that involves getting this together. So. Here's a very good question. How can I optimize the performance of my ReExt components? Well, I mean, this could be in a very different ways. The ones that I will suggest you to use, like to optimize this kind of performance, is, well, you need to consider following this: the breakdown of these large components into smaller reusable components. That would be the first one. You can also use what's called memoization, I think, which is well, just the cases use memo and use callback, which is basically to avoid any unnecessary re-renders from these components. So you can also use React lazy loading for components that are not needed immediately, and well, you can ensure efficient data fetching and state management practices in your project. So I hope this would help answering your question. Another one right here from Rodrigo. Can I customize the appearance of the grid and chart components? Yes. Well, basically, you can customize the appearance of any ReExt components. Each component accepts a style prop, as we've seen in this webinar, where you can define CSS styles. And additionally, many components have configuration options for like setting these properties like colors, margins, paddings, and more. Well, as we've seen in the webinar, for instance, you can change the bar colors in the chart by setting the colors property in what it was the series configuration. So yeah. Any more questions right now? Yeah, I have one here. How do I handle large data sets in the grid? That's a very good question. And I would say that if you already know how to do this in XJS, this will be a piece of cake. But for large data sets and to assure the performance for these grids, you can implement pagination, which is like to configure the grid with a toolbar, a pagination toolbar. Or you can use maybe virtual scrolling, which is like a plugin that's called buffer render, I think, that it basically manages the virtual scrolling. And also you can use well, you can use server-side loading, which is like to fetch a subset of data based on the current page or score position. Yeah, I that's a very good question. I hope that answers it. And yeah, I think that's all the questions we have right now. So thank you all for these thoughtful questions and for your active participation. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you. And if you have any further questions or need additional resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. We appreciate your time, and I hope you found this session valuable. So see you in the next webinar. Have a great day and evening. Bye-bye.